Okay, I had said that the Quran attempts to lay out a moral social order, a just society. It does that through several themes we're going to look at. Quranic theme number one is social justice. One of the most initially striking things about the Quran was the social justice that it institutionalized. Examples include the zakat, the alms tax, which is used for a social safety net, requirements about inheritance for women and children. Usury is forbidden. Usury is the loaning of money for interest. In modern usage, it means loaning of money for exorbitant levels of interest, but it originally meant any interest-bearing lending. The Ummah must struggle, Jihad is the Arabic word for struggle, to promote justice. This includes the right to armed defense to protect the downtrodden and victims of oppression. Unlike the New Testament, the Quran acknowledges that, yeah, sometimes fighting is necessary in the defense, in opposing oppression, and so we have some rules for that. Theme number two is gender equality, which I think would surprise a lot of people who think that it's kind of common knowledge that the Quran is, or the Islam rather, is patriarchal. It's not more patriarchal than any other society, but the revelation of the Quran raised the status of women in pre-Islamic Arabia in a number of ways. It banned female infanticide. Yes, that was a thing. You bear a female, don't really want her, so you take her out in the desert and just leave her. It ended women's status as property. Women were literally chattel in pre-Islamic Arabia. It gave women financial maintenance in the event of divorce. We've talked about the mar, the money gift. Men and women are both required to create a just society. And it speaks of, they both have a responsibility. They both are honored with this responsibility. This is the last revelation to address relations between men and women. Quranic theme number three is love and justice for families. The Hadith also underscores this. The Prophet said, "The best among you is the one who is best to his wife," and he himself had excellent relationships with his wives, and was very respectful of them, enjoyed their company, asked their advice. The Hadith tells us that, and that people were surprised by this. Religious tolerance. The Quran makes clear there is to be no compulsion in religion. Many passages underscored the diversity of humankind. And I want to read this one because it's one of my favorite verses. Surah 49, verse 13. O humanity, indeed, we created you from a male and a female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another. Surely the most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous among you. God is truly all-knowing, all-aware. So the Quran says, hey, God made us into different ethnicities so we could relate. It would be boring if everybody was the same. So this is a pitch for diversity. People of the book, i.e. Jews and Christians, were protected. For their protection, they paid a head tax because Muslims, of course, were already paying the zakat, so that's only fair. This was a very enlightened practice in pre-modern times. Theme number 5 is jihad, meaning struggle. The Quran commands that we struggle against the evil in ourselves. We also struggle to be moral, to reform society. This can also mean, however, the duty to fight injustice and oppression. Jihad, therefore, has two broad meanings, non-violent and violent. These two meanings are expressly contrasted. The Prophet, upon returning from warfare, once said, "We return from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad." The greater jihad is the more important and difficult struggle against the ego. So questions emerge as to what was proper in the times of war. And the Quran addresses this in detail. If we're going to have to fight for oppression, we need to have rules. Who fights? Who's exempted? When must hostility cease? How should prisoners be treated? One verse makes clear war must be proportional. The Quran also underscores that peace, not violence, is the normal state of humankind. And from the earliest times in Islam, it was forbidden to kill non-combatants, like children, women, the elderly, monks. Now you may be thinking, but don't Islamic terrorists do that? Well, yes, and they're un-Islamic. Christians do it too in the name of God in some cases. They're wrong. Now, there are these so-called sword verses, which sound really violent when taken out of context. Like one that says, "Then fight and slay the pagans wherever you find them, and seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war." So these are used by both critics of Islam and used and abused by Muslim extremists to develop a theology of hate. The full intent, however, is better understood when also reading the subsequent phrase in that verse, "But if they repent and establish regular prayers and practice regular charity, then open the way for them, for God is all-forgiving, most merciful." Another often misquoted sword verse, last line reads, "Until they pay the tax with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." It's important to look at the context. A little about the language of the Quran. It's in Arabic, obviously, classical Arabic, and it's the exclusive liturgical language of Islam. The Quran is considered a miraculous text whose language cannot be duplicated. Translation was forbidden until recently and is usually accompanied by Arabic. There are stories of people converting to Islam simply from hearing the Quran recited in Arabic. And it is incredibly beautiful and melodious, and we'll talk more about that after we watch our documentary movie. So, evil, shaitan, the evil one, is disobedience to God in the Quran. His fall was caused by his refusal to prostrate himself to Adam at God's command. Because God said, "See this wonderful thing I've created, humans." And this angel refused to bow, and this followed the struggle of humans torn between the forces of good and evil. Humans enjoy a special status because God breathes his spirit into Adam. They were created to be God's representatives on earth, which was given to them as a trust. There is no inherent sin, therefore. Humans aren't inherently sinful in Islam. God's punishment to Adam and Eve were for their own actions. Sin is disobedience rather than a state of being. And that is what I want to say now about the Quran.